I like Dune. Like, I like the old Dune for how wacky and sci-fi it is, but also like the new Dune because how they portrayed the Harkonnens. They actually seem like a different an alien race, whereas in the original they're just effectively humans but looked disgusting. But I mean, again, anything that's sci-fi and goofy, I'm into. And I want to like this game as well. It's just, I'm kind of just spent on survival games, really. I mean, and the reason why I am getting into just other older like sci-fi things is because, well, Star Wars has shat the bed. So, and Star Trek has shut the bed. But I'm watching the older Star Treks and playing the older Star Wars games. And there's other sci fi things, but I want to like Dune Awakening, but again, I'm already burnt out on survival. I think once you hear a game, something's a survival game and has crafting mechanics, it's like you know the gameplay loop you're going to deal with. You know effectively the game you're playing, and you've played it before. So this is IGN, whatever. Let's give it a watch.
Nothing worse than being chased across the desert by a sandworm in Dune Awakening, and that's getting eaten by a sandworm in Dune Awakening. Not only does the giant phallic...
I mean, that even looked like this kind of just looks butt ass Nate. Like this looks like one of those games that are like shovelware you have on Steam. Like the way you died, you just fell through and with no emotions, and it's like, oh, you're there. You go.
cretins suck you down into the bowels of Arrakis. It eats everything you're carrying: your clothes, your weapons, and especially your spice liquor. Suddenly you're respawning at your base in nothing but your underwear and are forced to do the run of shame across the sands to start rebuilding your inventory. It's easy to be skeptical about...
Yeah, and see, things like that is okay the first couple of times, but then you get bored.
MMO survival game set in the Juniverse. But after a few bouts of dehydration and sunstroke, the day I spent in Arrakis convinced me that Dune Awakening is one to watch. More than that, if the developer can deliver on its plans for the endgame, it could see an EVE Online-style future for its hardcore player base. This massive project is the work of Funcom, the studio of the Conan Exiles Dong Slider fame, and sets you on a path from broke-ass Arrakis hobo to an influential figure harvesting spice on an industrial scale and pushing their personal agenda at the Landsrad.
Yeah, again, like that melee combat just looked clunky, and I think they should have like a story mode type deal and a survival mode. Because again, if they kind of wrap both together, it's just I'm not interested.
It's got everything you expect from an MMO: intricate skill trees, PvP mechanics, base building and character customization, but with ornithopters and mind-altering substances thrown in.
Put your hand in the box.
Dune Awakening is set in a world where Lady Jessica had a sliding doors moment and chose to follow the instructions of the Bene Gesserit and have a daughter, Ariste, instead of the little twink we know and love, Paul Atreides. Cut to 29 years later, and the Harkonnens and Atreides are at war over Arrakis. The Fremen have been apparently wiped out, and alternative religions have evolved to fill the gap left by Lisan al-Gaib. The alternate timeline isn't meant as a nipple twist to fans, but Funcom needed the narrative space to make the player character consequential.
So, why did they have to make you the prophet, the al-Gaib? Like, they could have just made you some rando and then, things are happening, and you're just in the middle of it, and you can choose what side. They could have just made you just any regular spice farmer, then your spice transport gets eaten up, and you can join the Fremen or join the Harkonnens, depending on your decisions. Like, and this is what I don't like about games being made with just this set piece of skill tree and survival and all that. It's like it just waters down the setting. Like this just looks like Ark, only occasionally you shoot and it's a different set piece. Like this doesn't just feel like Dune to me. Like if you're just going to disregard the story just to make a survival, well, I think that's just a bad game.
Obviously, we did somewhat controversial, but I think very correct choice of creating the alternate history, which allowed us to detach a bit from what was going on in the movies and kind of focus on developing the game, he told us.
You can detach from what's happening in the world around you and still be relevant to the story. Again, they should have just not made you the chosen one. They could have just not made you the prophet. And they could have just not you could have the things happening around you, but you just a complete nobody. Or have you choose how you start. Like you can start out as a spice harvester, or you can start out as a Harkonnen, or start out with House Atreides, or start out as a Fremen. Like, there's just so many ways they could have did this and still sort of kept the gameplay loop. It's like, if people play Dune, they want to play the world. They don't just want to play, like like in a sand park, right? They don't just want to play, in a jungle gym that's just there. Like, they want to experience the lore of the game. At least that's why I feel like I would play this game. I mean, again, if you're just like the survival aspect, there's so many other survival games out there.
It's also been very helpful in that it allows us to bring a lot of the big name characters that people really want to interact with back into the story. So in the books, a lot of the big name characters die off quite early.
Yeah, well, you could have introduced new big game characters that will also die. Like, you can explain a big game character that was maybe hinted to in the book and explain their death. Or hell, why do there needs to be big name characters? Like, people want. I feel like I would want to experience the setting as intended, not this skewed, contorted setting that's made specifically to sell the open world. I mean,
our story, we get to keep them around, which is really cool. There are obviously things that we want to include more of in the future that were very popular in the movies. We won't have sandworm riding at launch, for instance, but sometime in the future we'll look at that.
Yeah, and again, you can have things that happen because, to my knowledge, at least in the the books, when the Al Gaib or whatever the fuck his name, the prophet, the Atreides guy, like they effectively start a space jihad and hold the spice captive and effectively kill half of the fucking galaxy. I mean, I feel like that would have been. And you're just playing as someone on Arrakis after all of that, and you have, the Fremen that are now, I guess they have control of the spice. You have things happening and interest happening around the area, and you can keep all of this.
If it still doesn't sit right, Dune purists should know that Funcom got the blessing of the Herbert estate for the project, working with it and the makers of the current movies to keep everything true to the lore. It influences everything from the skills
So you're keeping it true to the lore, but then going against the lore. Or, like, not going against the lore, you're throwing the lore out just so you can make this story that probably isn't going to lead anywhere. And what the fuck? Harvest plant fiber? What the fuck type of quest? Oh, I guess this is for the goddamn research for clothing. Like, again, this is why the whole survival aspect just goes away. Like, it waters down. Like, survival waters down, or at least butts head with horror. It butts head with, like, sci-fi in this grandiose world. Like, I'd say the only like survival works in Ark, I suppose. It worked, at least for me, in Pal World because the point was to enslave the goddamn pals. It worked in Minecraft, but in Once Human, the whole survival aspect just sort of took away for me. And I feel like it's going to do the same for this game.
you can learn to the crafting progression, and it's a key part of trying to ensure that Awakening stands out in an ever-growing pack. Survival games are all over Steam right now, and I've tried most of them. Drop me naked in a jungle and I'll happily bash rocks and branches together for hours. Abandon me penniless in a fantasy landscape and I'll be crafting swords before breakfast. Dune Awakening stands out the minute you exit character creation for one very stressful reason. Arrakis isn't...
Yeah, I guess there's a group of people that like sort of the whole survival thing, but it's like, you said it yourself, it's like we've reached market saturation. This just doesn't seem... It seems like the same gameplay loop, but with a different setting, different skybox, different land. It's like, that just doesn't really appeal. Like, I hate to be negative. I mean, it looks cool. It's just, they could have made a story, have everything that happened, but just had you play just sort of as a complete fucking nobody, and when things conspire around you, well, it's just you and your fucking spice harvester, or you and your platoon of Harkonnens murdering Fremen, or you and your cohort of Fremen, I don't know, searching the desert. Like, I don't understand why they're contorting the story.
Exactly a tropical island or a verdant forested ecosystem. In the opening area, Haga Basin, there's no water, scarce wildlife, and a distinct lack of coconuts. Oh, and the sun is like really, really hot, and you're susceptible to sunstroke. There are scavengers who want to kill you everywhere, and did I mention the sandworms? For the first few hours, my entire life hinged on dewdrops, granite, and plant fibres, and the advice of an NPC with a pet bat who babied me through covering the basics of weapons, armour, and hydration until I could make it on my own. You're not totally pathetic during this time, thanks to a selection of abilities that you can unlock as you gain experience. I leaned into my manipulative wifey side and chose the Bene Gesserit skills, which gave me the power to compel enemies towards me and hang in front of me for a few moments before going back to trying to kill me. Don't get me wrong, I was still very...
Yeah, and that seems cool, right? Having all the Bene Gesserit magic, or you could choose, the Atreides fighting style and gear, or the Harkonnen fighting style gear, or the Fremen fight. Like, those things seemed cool. It's just, I feel it's just going to be watered down. Like, I'm looking down here, well, I can't, it's harder as I pause. I'm looking down here at your skills, and it just looked like an MMO.
Pretty much a toddler in the eyes of Dune Awakening. One ability I unlocked was better sunstroke tolerance, but by the end of the day in Arrakis, I had slightly better weapons and had mastered a super fast dash move that got me out of some trouble. I could only dream of the wild combinations of ranged and melee combat combined with passive and active abilities that could be swapped in and out according to need, shown off by the developers, but the skill point acquisition felt fast enough that I'll get there without too much hanging around once I'm playing at home. You won't be tied to your first speciality choice either, so you'll be able to mix and match. The other starting classes are Trooper, Mentat, sort of recon and strategy focused, and Swordmaster.
Yeah, and again, that tells me that eventually you'll just have all the skills. Like, having, the player choose a route is fine, as long as you build out the tree to be decent enough. Like, I mean, I'm looking back at this tree and it just doesn't really, like, I guess it's just skills, and yeah, like, this doesn't really look that interesting. Or maybe it's bigger than this. This is just what I'm being shown. But
the other starting classes are Trooper, Mentat, sort of recon and strategy focused, and Swordmaster. Another key element we only got a taste of was the very lifeblood of the Dune lore, spice. Spice is powerful in the world of Dune Awakening in every sense of the word, but it's also not easy to amass as a lone noob in the early hours. You'll find spice liquor and food in the world, which unlocks a brief period of prescient power, though it comes with withdrawal symptoms. But later in the game, you can build transports, harvesters, an automated spice collection system to score the quantities you'll need for trade, serious crafting, all managing a raging spice addiction. I suspect the value of spice to players versus the pain of collecting it will be something Funcom will be balancing long after the game is released. Producer Nils Ryborg also explained how the spice mechanic would work. I think spice is really cool, obviously super important in the lore, and we use it to, well, it has some story aspects that I won't get into, but it's also the fact that we can use it to improve the strength of our abilities and how well we get to interact with them. But then having the drawback of the spice addiction and needing more of it, more and more and more, a lot of the endgame systems being reliant on, hey, can you get enough spice to pay all your taxes for your huge base and have the correct political sway that you need and build whatever endgame things that you need to build? I feel that it's been a very rewarding thing to pull off, because we're now allowing all the iconic things that you think of from the Dune books to become natural mechanics that fit very well into the game.
yeah, and all that is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Kind of having to choose between building up or, becoming an addict. I mean, that's cool. I mean, it's kind of like Dust in the Endless series. Like Endless Dungeons of the Endless Legends, Endless Space. Kind of like that idea. But, again, what's getting me riled up is the fact that they're contorting the story instead of just making you a nobody. It's like, you're a nobody, but you're also part of House Atreides because you're born to them. But it's also a completely different world. Like, I don't know if they could have taken place off of Arrakis, because I mean, Spice, Dune, Arrakis is kind of the point. Shai-Hulud. But, again, the fact that they're contorting the story is really just still getting to me.
He also explained how a spice addiction might affect you. If you're constantly high up on spice, you will start seeing weird and wonky things. I think it's fun, right? Because you're empowering your abilities, but you're also potentially putting yourself in the situation where you have worse possibilities.
Yeah, I feel like that's just gonna be the way they tell the stories, through your spice-ridden hallucinations instead of, playing the game. Like, I guess there's some, like, hub areas, but I don't know. And your base building.
So you're balancing that whole act of, oh, I need to do this or this, and then also knowing that you need this resource for progression in other mechanics. So you're tapping into it now for a temporary boost for this fight, but long term you need it to pay taxes, gain political sway, and so on. Once you've learned to live Arrakis style, you can start to focus on more than just beverages. There's a simple building system, so you can start to construct your base, or sub-fief, and which you'll slowly start to fill with machines that automate the basics of survival. A machine to extract water from blood that you can harvest from enemy corpses, another to purify the ores that you find. You'll need a fabricator to create armor and weapons. We only had access to very basic granite building blocks at the early stage of Dune Awakening, but options for customization will increase as you progress. Personally, I can't wait to build some severe mansion with Harkonnen aesthetics. You can also copy your base to move as your focus turns to new areas of Arrakis, so none of that
What type of Harkonnen aesthetics? You mean like the older Dune or the new Dune Harkonnens? Because the older Dune Harkonnen aesthetics looked like, I don't know, like in what was that game? I can't think of the name of the game. Wolfenstein, like the the Wolfenstein German aesthetic, Nazi aesthetic. That was what the older Dune Harkonnens looked like. The newer Dune Harkonnen aesthetics looked interesting, but
tedious multiple base nonsense that survival players are sometimes cursed with. It's easy to picture my time spent in a loop of harvesting materials, completing side quests or contracts, and taking out scavengers whenever I come across them. And I did come across them a lot. There are camps dotted around the map and enemies will respawn there on a regular basis, so you'll always have some walking blood bags to exsanguinate when you need to. At times the enemies in the camps felt a little cut and paste. Early on I was passing the same camps over and over as I ran across the map, staying in shadows to avoid the heat of the sun, and dealing with them started to feel like a grind. Close to the end of the demo, the development team took pity on us and spawned ornithopters, and it's easy to see how that issue won't reappear once you're not trudging back and forth across the map looking for a new supply of ore.
The ornithopters look sleek and new. Like, I like the more rugged design that the movies had. Well, the newer movies and the older ones. I mean,
you're free to wander the desert collecting twigs, but there are multiple story arcs or journeys that push you deeper into the world. As well as Batboy's Arrakis 101 seminar, there's a Herbertian set of trials you're tasked with completing after a spy stream, and that's where things get trippy.
Arrakis is suffering.
No spoilers, but the first, the trial of a Cool, involves stealthing around a cabin to avoid the notice of a giant golden glowing eye. The Witness was a welcome interlude in the cycle of harvesting materials, killing scavengers, and fulfilling basic contracts for the trade post.
yeah, but again, something's lost in the story when you have the whole, oh, it's all a dream type setting. Like, this is the thing that the new zombies for Call of Duty suffered from. It's like you're experiencing everything through a fucking dream sequence. And I guess it allows you to be a little more creative, but it's just kind of a cop-out.
And I'm hungry to know what the other trials have in store.
Defiance leads to thought. Who is it that thinks?
Some stuff we didn't get to try for ourselves were the more social aspects of Dune Awakening. Prove your skills for survival and skullduggery in Arrakis, and you'll get to the end game, wielding influence at the Landsrad, where factions of players can make choices that will affect the world. Being as we were in the toddler end of the Dune Awakening pool, we only got to experience the PvE part of the experience, which with everything else I was trying to deal with felt like a blessing. The producer told us that while you can enjoy the game as a loner, those later social aspects will be vital to being an Arrakis kingpin, from taking on the tough dungeon-style eco-lab locations to trading for items.
The rules here are simple. Pay up front and don't cause trouble, or we'll toss you into the storms. Good?
It might not be easy living in the world of Dune Awakening, but as a Frank Herbert fan, I'm confident that the experience is in good hands. It's a combination of solid mechanics that put a twist on the usual scenarios, and a deep, deep obsession with the work of Herbert that strengthens
Yeah, I
the
mean,
world.
this looks like this whole idea of, oh, I want to go up there and the ornithopter, like, that's a cool aspect of the game. Like, that's something that yes, you should have, and having some means of transportation other than the ornithopters would also be interesting, but I get ornithopters, Dune, whatever. But, I mean, the combat looks stiff. The running looks stiff. There's very few powers that were shown off in this preview. Like, you had the base building and some story aspects in that. I'm assuming that was like a hub area that you went back to, that they talked about how they're going to have a faction thing. But I don't know. I guess the price. It will always just come down to the price of a game. Is it going to be a $70 game? Mm. Or is it going to be a $40 game? Or a $30 game? I don't know.
World building beyond the abilities of most narrative designs. Yes, I'm basically peeing in my still suit with excitement, even after the sandworm trauma. All I need now is just Funcom to add an ability to make a Muad'Dib my in-game pet, running on a hamster wheel, rather than just another furry blood bag. For more on Dune Awakening, don't miss the cinematic story trailer and the gameplay reveal trailer. And for everything else in the world of video games, stay in the shade on your way to IGN.
Again, what I've seen from the game, and like it looks cool, but I feel it doesn't look fun to play. Like if I was to play it, I'd probably be. I guess it's better with friends. So little twink, we know and love Paul Atreides, bro. What? Lol. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I hate that they're replacing him. Like again, there's so many ways they could have done this. Still could have had everything that happened, but you just be a nobody. Sorry to the player phase through the floor in the beginning. Yeah, whenever she got eaten by the damn worm. But granted, this is just a preview. I'm not gonna diss it too bad. Blessing of the Herbert estate doesn't mean much to hardcore Dune fans unless you resurrect the OG Spice Papa Frank. Yeah, I mean it doesn't mean a thing. Is me or the narration unhinged at times? I don't know. Give it a couple of years or so of updates and I'll consider it. Yeah, maybe a couple of updates, maybe, patches and add more things. Maybe they'll lower the price. I played the beta, it's pretty enjoyable. No way girl said broke ass, Arrakis, hobo. Yeah, I mean, that's how all survival games start you out as. Melee kind of looks kind of underwhelming, which is disappointing considering it should be more the focus with Doom. Yeah, I mean, with Doom, like there are guns, but they have the shields, and they kind of made them useless. This is why they fight in Melee. Blessing of Herbert State, you mean Brian Herbert, author of the Butlerian Jihad. Melee combo is very bad for a Dune game. I love Dune, so I'll give it a try, but I am skeptical. Now we just need a final preview this game needs for the polish. The graphics and animations are holding it back for me. Yeah, they need to work on phasing through ground things when the player gets eaten. Sandworm rhyming needs to be extremely difficult, but it is a must. Yes. Where's the sand walk? Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Like, I feel like that would make you take a hell of a lot longer to get through the sand, but I mean, again, when she said that there's less vegetation, less animals, like, and less everything else, like, what that tells me is it's just a boring, vapid open world with dots of encampments, which is, I guess, on brand for Dune, but is that really fun to play? I don't know. But, where's that final comment? You're gonna be the... She did not call Paul a twink, bruh. Yeah, very interesting. Broke ass Arrakis hobo. I like that better. But anyway, that's all I gotta say about this. Peace.